Welcome YouTube to another D&D Fridays. As usual, it is y'all's favorite, the Geek Life. Today we'll be taking a look at just Milestone versus EXP leveling, pros and cons to each, and just what we think of um, of each leveling type of thing. But before we do that, don't forget hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and comment on down below on what you think on both systems. Without further ado, let's get to leveling up. So in D&D, it's kind of like a lot of different games. You have levels that you can basically grow, gain new power, spells, what have you, up to level 20. But how you go about leveling, that's where the differences come into play, depending on the campaign, the GM, or it could be even from level to level. So we have two big giants in the room: milestone leveling and EXP leveling. Let's start off with probably the more well-known leveling method, the experience point leveling. So I think the experience point leveling comes a lot from like video games and a lot and the like, as you have experience points and each level has some sort of increase in cap where you have to reach that point before you can level up. So let's say you need 300 XP to level up. You need to be like killing monsters, completing side quests, whatever it may be, to get experience points. And once you reach 300 or more experience points, you're now at the next level. And now it might take you 900 experience points. So within that, it can be found in the player's handbook or anywhere on the internet. There's a experience point chart, and it shows you exactly what the experience point cap is that you need to hit to level up from whatever level to the next level. With the exception, of course, of level 20, but there's nothing higher than level 20 unless your GM somehow homebrews something crazy in there.
Didn't earlier editions have higher level caps?
Yeah, I do believe so. I don't remember what the level caps were off the top of my head,
I don't either.
but definitely stay tuned for when we cover the culture of D&D, where we take a look at previous D&D editions, and we might just have that answer. But when it comes to experience points, many people think of the first thing that people think of when it comes to gathering experience points is killing things, goblins, hobgoblins, dragons, what have you. So I think when it comes to that, really you really gather a lot of the murder hobos, as folks like to call it, as people tend to think, I really want to get that new spell or whatnot. Let's head out of town real quick and lay waste to this goblin camp real quick. We might be able to level up. So let's see that. Um, I think many people probably have a better idea of it now, but for those that might not have a thought about it, there could be other ways of leveling up. Maybe you somehow complete a side quest to rescue a lost kitten from an old grandma or something like that. You could be awarded 300 XP for that completing that side quest, or you have to stop a burglary, that might be 600 XP or something like that. So there's different ways that you can accrue experience points other than just killing things.
Yeah, I think that's something that, to your point, we sometimes lose track of as players, right? Is we think I think we equate it a little bit too much to video games because that's how you usually get experience in video games is going out and killing the bad guys. But there are solving mysteries, solving puzzles, doing these non-combat side quests are definitely a great way to also get experience. And I think the GM the DMs and the GMs need to make sure that they are considering that when they're figuring out what they want to, how they want their party to level up, right?
Hmm.
And how they can incorporate that into some of those side quests and other activities.
Yeah. And when it comes to the advantages of experience points, I think the first thing that comes to mind is with that, everybody knows exactly where they are in that level up chain. So you know, hey, I know I need 1,500 experience points to level up to this next level, to a level 10, let's say. So I know what I need to do and accomplish to do that. So I'm going to be really looking to drive things and steer things into that direction.
Yeah, it gives you the roadmap. It lets you know how far away you are. It lets you do a little bit of potentially planning on. All right, we've been gaining on average 250 XP every game, so we need 10 more games, and then we'll be maybe leveling up. Right? It lets that expectation kind of set in.
Yeah. But on the other hand, other side of that coin, I think a pretty big disadvantage to that is it's a lot of bookkeeping. I think maybe not so much for the players, but I think that disadvantage is much more for the GM who's really building those encounters, because now you have to calculate, all right, I have this enemy, and these three enemies. I need to figure out how much XP is that in total. Is that enough challenge? Is that too much experience that I want to give out? Is that just enough? Or is it too little experience that I want to give out at the moment? So it's really just trying to find that balance of just the right XP. Like, this is supposed to be a pretty easy side quest. What does an easy side quest look like in terms of XP? Would that be 200 XP? Would it be 1,000 XP? How does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think another one of the downsides of XP, at least as a new player coming into D&D, I didn't understand how the points would be allocated. So when I was initially looking through the book, the first couple of times I was actually looking through the player's guide, I was like, oh, these monsters have XP on them. So when I kill that monster, when the party kills that monster, each of us get 300 XP or whatever it is. Sweet, we're going to level up super fast. That's not how that works at all.
Yeah. As XP, it's actually divided up between players. If you have 100, if you get 100 XP from something and you have 5 players, each player only gets 20.
Yep. Yep. So there's a little bit of, as a new player, obviously experienced players already realize that, but as a newer player, it's sometimes could be a little bit of a shock.
Yep, I agree. But it it's definitely there for those who enjoy the feeling of writing down the experience and tracking a experience bar per se. On the flip side of the coin, we have milestone leveling, and what this sort of method is really about is the GM will tell the players when they level up. It's usually based on a point in the story, like maybe they completed a story arc or what have you. Um, they cleared out a temple or whatever it may be, so then the GM will say, all right, y'all did something significant enough. Y'all are now level 6 or whatever it may be. I personally thoroughly enjoy this because it takes a lot less stress off of me when it comes to planning things. I know, all right, this is about where I want to end the campaign. I want my players to be level like 15 when they fight the big bad, so I know about where I want my players to level up, and I know I I guess this is probably one of the advantages to milestones for at least me personally as a GM is now I can plan out my story a lot better and create my bosses more and whatnot because I know, all right, this is going to be like the third to the last boss. I'm figuring they should probably be around level 12, give or take, when they fight this. I know how to line them up here, and I'll add in an extra like 2 levels, let's say, just for when they do, if they decide to do some side quest sessions or something like that. I have that extra pad in, but for the most part, I can plan a lot better on where I want things to be in the story and whatnot.
Yeah, that was an aspect I hadn't really thought about. Was it allows the DM to put together um, a map of when he wants the players to level up, depending on where they're at in the story. Um, and I think that's actually a really good and interesting dynamic to being able to use milestone leveling.
Hmm. And then I guess to a degree, maybe a slight disadvantage is maybe sometimes a player might not exactly know when they might be leveling. But I think when it comes to that, at least what I've found in many times in milestone leveling is usually I think it becomes that sort of track where most times you're thinking, all right, we're probably gonna level up after like 3, 4, 5 sessions, give or take. Probably, unless we're doing something far right.
Went way off the rails.
Yeah, but you kind of get that feeling of, even though we're not tracking experience points, we know we're probably going to be leveling up after a couple sessions or something like that.
Yeah, I think the there's an element of surprise when you use milestone leveling for the players, right? And with some DMs, you definitely can catch the pattern that every 5, 6 sessions, or after every mini boss fight or whatever like that, you can expect. But there is that element of surprise, and I think for some players that's a fun way to do it because not only did you just beat the big one of the big bads or one of the mini bosses, and you've got that excitement, then you hear the DM be like, and guess what, here's an extra little side bonus for you, you get a level up. So it adds to that. But I also know that sometimes if you're not careful, if a DM isn't careful and lets a lot of sessions go by without allowing the party to level up, it does kind of start feeling like it starts feeling like a drag a little bit, right? Like, when are we gonna level up? I want this next ability. Like, as players, you're always constantly planning on what's the next thing I'm gonna take, right? Because you want to see your PC grow, and so I think there is that, it's a double edged sword.
Yep. And I think another advantage of the milestone leveling is, since it's usually based on maybe like a story arc or what have you, it really gives your players more of a incentive to do different things within the story and whatnot, because they know, all right, if I go and um, clear out this enemy layer, I know I'm going to get a level out of it. Let me start planning on how we're going to go about doing that. Do we need to go on a quick side quest to get some armor for it or whatever? Or now that we've done that, we know, all right, let's go do this thing because we know a level up is waiting for us.
Right.
So that incentive is highly treasured.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Yep. Then I think that that overall, me personally, it does feel kind of fun, but it does take a lot of that bookkeeping out, kind of like the inverse of experience points.
Yeah.
A lot less tracking and the like, so it really cuts down on the work a DM has to do, because the GM has a lot of stuff to really plan. Some sessions they might have more than others, but it's still more or less the same.
Yeah. I, I think for me, I'd probably slightly lean towards the milestone method versus the XP. Not by much. I don't really have, I can live with the surprise or the knowing. Like, for me, that's not a big deal. But I think I lean slightly more towards the milestone. Um, as a As a DM, though, Nakai, have you ever thought about mixing the two methods together?
So I never thought about mixing the two, but I have heard of other people mixing milestone and experience points. Um, I have heard of both ways of like starting out the first few levels with milestone, then going EXP, as well as starting the first few levels EXP, then going milestone. And it seemed to work for some groups. I think it's something that you'll have to discuss as a group and see if it's something that people are up for. But but I think that it probably gives it definitely changes up the suspense a little bit and gives you like that different play style to some degree.
Yeah,
Um, but at least at the moment, I'm not sure if I personally like that.
ever do
But
that?
but that just could just be my bias versus milestone versus love and milestone.
Sure. No, that makes sense. I I mean, I can see it working for early game versus late game. Do XP early game and then milestone late game. Once you start getting into the realm of needing, 35,000, 40,000 XP to be able to get to the next level, and
Hmm.
you switch over to doing milestone because the story will carry you a little bit faster in that regard. But but yeah, I hadn't really thought about it until I just asked you the question. So I have no other thoughts on it myself.
Yeah. And now that I think about it, I think one of the biggest advantages to milestone leveling, and I think is probably one of the big reasons why I love milestone leveling, is milestone leveling makes it so much easier to homebrew stuff.
Mm,
Because when you're as if you're using like the monster manual or Mordecai's or something, the creatures already have their EXP right there. You can just look it up
right.
easy. But when you're creating your own creatures, your own quests, stuff like that, and you're using EXP, now you have to think about how challenging is this creature versus this group and whatnot. How can I figure out, is this enough EXP as a single monster, and would that change if I threw in some minions? How does that work? But when it comes to milestone, all you have to do is this a easy battle I want to do? Let me spec it for easy battle. Is this a deadly battle? Let me just spec the creatures for deadly. I don't have to worry about figuring out how much EXP a homebrew creature should have.
Yeah,
So I think that's probably the biggest thing, at least for my side of things.
that makes sense. That makes sense. I think that would be to your point, right? Probably a huge boon to most DMs because it takes some of that paperwork off their plate.
Yeah. And then I guess another thing that you have to think about is if you're doing EXP and a player happens to need to miss a session for whatever reason, but you still play,
Mhm.
you have to think about, should I award that player the same amount of XP as well, even though he wasn't here, or do I not, and try to figure out how to deal with the repercussions of that afterwards?
Yeah, that does impact if somebody has to miss a session for whatever reason. That does impact the the allocation of the XP, and I've seen some DMs basically not allocate any to the player that's missed, and so everybody that's there for that night gets a little bit extra, so that puts them a little bit farther ahead. And then I've also seen where they just say, nope, everybody gets the same amount. We're going to just keep the other player up to level, right? And but using milestone, you take away the problematic nature of needing to decide that potentially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's another thing that I like about Milestone. Like, along with giving out gold, I like giving out nice whole numbers that can be divisible by each player. So I don't have to think about that. So I know when this player comes back next session, he or she is the same exact level, gold, all that stuff as everybody else. So it's pretty simple to keep track. I can just shoot that player a message to say, "Hey, you missed this, that, and another, and don't worry, you're on level 5 now." So
Yep.
start thinking about what third level spells you want or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that's a super helpful way of just keeping everything online and balanced with each other.
Yeah.
It's the
Agreed.
last thing you want to do, really. I think me personally is have a player that's like a level or two behind, and now you're going up against some strong boss or something, and now you're like, I'm like 2 levels behind. I don't have third level spell slots, and we got to go up against this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it also eliminates potential envy, at the table if you're keeping everybody up at the same level. Whether that's through the evenly allocating if somebody misses or just doing the milestone leveling. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And but overall, I think it's a group to group decision on which level up method that you go with. It's something that should definitely be discussed in a session zero, especially if you have new players to the group. If you've been playing with the same group or same folks for multiple campaigns, you probably are going to be sticking with the same thing most of the time.
Yep. Yep.
I have heard of sometimes people changing things up between campaigns, but I feel like a lot of groups probably stick with one of those methods through most of their campaigns, if not all of them.
Whatever they're most comfortable with. Yeah, that probably
Yeah.
makes.
So I definitely think that anytime you have a new player, definitely let them know this is what how we play. Are you yay or nay with that type of method?
Yep.
If yes, great, you're on board. If nay, nothing wrong with it. It's just a comfort style of play.
Exactly.
So all in all, there's definitely some good and some bad to each. I say as always, go with whatever seems most comfortable, most fun, whatever it may be to the group, and feel free to change it mid campaign or every other campaign or whatnot if you decide to, um, or even create your own little homebrew level up system if you wish to take that challenge on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with that, we'll level up your life to the next level of geekiness. And until next time, folks, keep y'all's life geeky.
Bye, everybody.